What is going on, everybody? I would like to start this off by saying happy Veterans Day, and I appreciate everybody who served, and I appreciate all the sacrifices that people have made for us to have the freedom to even get on here and do stuff like this. There's so many different inspirational moments in history and people that have served, and meeting every day, and there's a reason we get to have the freedoms that we get to have, and it's for the people that have served and been away from their families and sacrificed so much. So I appreciate everybody that's had anything to do with serving in our military. But I was sitting here thinking about a couple things, and some of the I really like history, and just some of the the mainstream stories that you hear about every day, and how at least for me, it kind of gives you goosebumps to hear a story about some, just or like a military movie of stuff that goes on every day. And there's so many different people that have, you know, lost their lives and lost their loved ones and friends, and I think we kind of take that for granted every day. And there's so many stories that we haven't heard about, but there's so much to learn from our history, and there's so much to learn from a lot of these veterans and people in the armed forces. But I don't think they get told enough that, we appreciate you guys, and, everything you guys have done for us to be able to do, just normal things that go to work. That it's truly a blessing. And there's so many times I would like to ask, some people questions, and, how'd you get to where you were, especially in World War II. I've always been real fascinated with World War II. And man, it'd be so cool to just sit down and have a conversation with somebody that maybe stormed the beaches in Normandy, and how scared they were. I mean, if you think about it, you get on that boat, and you got your gear on. Maybe you're 18 years old, maybe you like just turned 19, just turned 20 years old. And you get drafted, or you signed up yourself, and I think a lot of people did sign up, probably for signed up on their own, because that's what you probably should have did. That's what everybody probably should have did. And but to be on that boat, and to hear the leadership give the plan, and to have the courage to, walk, and not be paralyzed by fear. It's always been crazy to me to think, like, I don't know, I'm a thinker, so I'm also a worrier. And if I was looking, if I was on the boat and I'm watching what's going on in front of me, I'm starting to think like, hey, Captain, these guys ain't making it far out there. You sure? You sure this is what we want to do? O- Okay, we're just gonna keep going. Man, it just the courage that those guys had, and knowing, I mean, there's a lot of things I won't do because I don't know what the outcome would be. And so just knowing that there's a good chance, and I feel like they would have to know in the back of their mind, there's a good chance this is probably not going to end well. And I'm sure our government, I didn't serve or anything like that, and I'm sure that people in the armed forces are pressured into doing stuff that they don't feel comfortable with. And but they got family at home, they got loved ones at home, and at the time they think they're doing what they think is right. And a lot of times that's paid for all of us to have the freedoms we do have. But man, the courage to get out there and step out on, if you hit the beaches, and not that, any service member, and no matter which war you were a part of, I don't think anyone was greater than others. You know, World War II is more of a more spoken about war that, everybody's been in. But especially stuff like Pearl Harbor, or anything along that lines, like it was a lot different style than I think. Well, I mean, I don't know. The Civil War was probably pretty bad too. I mean, it'd really be hard for me to be standing there trying to load a musket, looking at the guy in front of me, loading his musket faster than me, and I'm supposed to stand in there and not break rank. And I mean, I don't know. If I was losing the musket loading battle, I don't want to be standing there when he gets his up. So I think in all of our history, and there's so much to learn from history, and so many different that like so many people did so much, and there's so many stories of just courageous people, and imagine all the ones we haven't heard. I recently watched Hacksaw Ridge again, and it's a movie, and Hollywood kind of does their thing with stuff, and with a lot of the military movies, they kind of they might add something, they might leave something out, but to think that you had the courage to get on the battlefield and with all the people that were, not believing in him and dogging him and making comments and just the ridicule that was going on of people just, like, I don't want him beside me. I don't want him beside me. And, once they got out there and you're faced with what's reality or no, your actual reality and what you've got yourself into and people breaking, and this guy that is refusing to even touch a weapon is the only one coming over. Your guys have already pulled off the top, right? So everybody that could get out, they're gone, right? And so maybe you're pinned down or maybe you're hurt and you can't do nothing. And so you're just kind of waiting, right? Because nobody's crazy enough to be up there. And the last person you would think that would have the courage, right, is the guy that you've been dogging this whole time. And, you've talked down to and you've, laughed at. That's the guy that's coming. I mean, just imagine the irony of what was going through their heads in that specific moment. And I'm sure it was like, man, I'm so glad to see you. And I don't know, with everything that was going on, they probably never put it together. And, I kind of question, like, in the Bible, it talks about angels walking among us. And I don't know if that, stuff like that could be an angel or not, but man, talk about courage. Just if you could just have a 10-minute conversation with that guy that was willing to run out. And I mean, he had such a good heart. He was saving the enemy too. I mean, he wasn't just doing his guys, and he was just trying to put love and peace back into the world. And man, I strive to be like those kind of people in life. And I don't do anything crazy. I'm just a blue collar worker. I go to work and I take care of mine, and I do my best every day. I wake up early in the morning. I try to do good into the world. I try to sow good into the world. But man, if it don't fill you full of excitement and like, if you hear something motivational and you get excited, you maybe you're gonna lose some weight or you're gonna work out. Like for me, I get pumped up to hear like courageousness, like a true heart of a lion, to be able to stand up there and know you have nothing to defend yourself with, and still know that no matter what's going to happen, you got guys up there and you're not going down without them, and you stay up all night and you get as many as you can, and the whole time you're asking, let me just get one more. Let me just get one more. And why the same people that put you down are at the bottom of the hill wondering who's up there, who's at the top, who's there, who's doing this. And, just imagine the conversation that you could have with that guy just for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to talk to him about what was going through his head. And to me, that was one of the coolest people that I've ever heard about. And there's other stories, like there's so many different stories, like, and I don't think we give credit to, there's in our armed services, you got the frontline fighters, and you got the planes, and you got the Navy, but you also got intelligence agents, and nobody's talking about those intelligent agents. But in World War II, for an example, the intelligence saved, man, they saved so many lives, and they could have saved more lives, but people didn't believe them, and they didn't trust them, and when you look at giving thanks, and you hear people talk about, I no, I didn't, I served, but I was I was in the office, or I was in the backlog, I didn't fight. I wasn't a frontline fighter. No, you did your part too. You know, sometimes when you talk to other people about the military, if you didn't necessarily to listen to them talk to each other, they don't have no respect for people that didn't serve in the same capacity that they serve. They kind of look down on them for, like, like, what do you know? You didn't get out there with me. You weren't in those trenches. And for me, like I said, I didn't serve, so this is just a blue collar construction worker's thought process. But from the outside looking in, like, that dude on that intelligence agent, or that dude on that radio that is answering the call when you need an airdrop, or answering the call when you need support, or whatever. He's playing a very vital role, and just because he's not out there in the front line, you got to have somebody that mans the boards, and the communications. And I think a lot of them don't give themselves the credit that they deserve, because they maybe feel guilty that they didn't serve, like I said, in the same capacity that others have served. And I think comparison, like I said, comparison will rob you of your joy. But anybody that served in the armed forces, you know, any American, anybody that gets to wake up and choose what they do every day, and get to choose where they go and eat. We owe you guys a lot of gratitude, and there's no way to really put it in words how we can show our gratitude to you guys other than thank you. And I try to, anytime I see somebody that served, or has served, I want to tell them, man, I really appreciate you. But something that it doesn't get talked about a lot, and so many of them struggle with it, is adapting to life outside of the military. And our leaders are so good at sending our kids and our boys, and maybe even men at the time, depending on what age you enlisted in. And then as soon as they're done with them, they discard them. And so they come back with all these problems, and a lot of them are too prideful to talk about it, and maybe ashamed of some stuff that they had to do. And maybe because you kind of have that alpha male mentality, and you want to be, maybe you're a teams guy, or whatever, and so you're not supposed to show any emotion. And so when you get back here, it's just so hard to adapt to everyday lifestyle. And especially when you hear somebody talk about their problems, and you're still going through stuff that you've dealt with, overseas, or wherever you were called to serve at. But man, at least for me, anybody that knows me personally, man, if you've been in the military, and I got a cousin right now, and man, I love that guy. I wish the best for him. He's been a real inspiration to me. Yeah, I mean, he has had some rough patches, but I see so much good in him. And there's not a good way for me to. We're at two different walks in our life. And so I can't really get over there to him. I'm out of town all the time. when I'm in town, he's busy. Like if I'm by him, he's busy. And then when I'm, it's just so hard to connect to each other. But if you ever listen to this, man, I just want to say, I love you. You're, you know, you mean a lot to me. I appreciate everything you do, but I know it's hard to open up to somebody that you love. It's hard to open up to family or people but I anytime you want to talk, anything you want to get off your chest, I'm always here. Anybody, anybody that's listening, if anybody, choose to listen to this, if, you know, man, leave a comment. I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to, if you're struggling or if you just need somebody to talk to, I'd love to be that guy. I had some stuff in my past that I dealt with, and I don't, it's nowhere near the same as what like I said, some of these stories that, just the ones that you hear about. And like I said, there's probably so many that you don't even get to hear about and don't get no appreciation. But like I said, with, you know, not wanting to talk about it and not feeling ashamed, like you should never feel ashamed because there was a path that led you there, and you kind of just get dumped out at the end of it, and there's gotta be something to help you guys, and I would love to be able to talk to some people, or just maybe to be a light, or just be somebody to listen, just to listen and to let you know you're appreciated. And just with today being Veterans Day, it really got me thinking. And you see videos of people honoring, and I saw a video earlier of a World War II veteran, and he was like, one of the coolest things after getting back from the military was being able to tell my story because it's my story. And, he said so many people are afraid to ask. And he's like, we want y'all to, and he said, I can't speak for everybody, but at least, I wanted to talk about it. He said, because it helped me. And he said it kind of brought back memories of my brothers, and the people that I got to serve with, and the people that I got to experience, kind of growing up and maturing into a man and learning with. And, once you get out of that, you kind of probably lose contact with a lot of your buddies and the people you got to serve with in your company or your squad or whatever it may be. So you don't get to really, there's no adjustment period. You're kind of just back into the civilian life. And I think, some people, they get out and they thrive, and then some people spiral. And I don't think that as a society we have any way to help really spiraling, especially when somebody's not ready to ask for help. And so maybe the way to do it is to just give, encouragement, just to encourage them and call and check on them, right? Be your brother's keeper, and be, just be there. And you don't even have to say something. And sometimes it's not even words, I think, to say. I think the main thing is just to be present. And like I said, I didn't serve. And so maybe I'm the wrong person to even talk about this, but I do have a lot of respect and admiration for the armed forces and pride in my country. And, the just being able to wake up and do what we all get to do for the freedom we have. And, a lot of people bash, America, or bash our country, and they don't have pride. But man, in a natural disaster is usually like when the world's falling apart, that's usually when you see the best in people. And it is sad that that's when you find the best out of society, is when everything is going wrong. And that's normally when people pull together. And there are some times where people are pulling together, and then people are also looting and going through stuff, and I'm sure that happened, in every walk and in every part of the world that probably happens. But kind of seeing some of the stuff that you see and listening to some of the stories, at least for me, you guys give, the armed services and people are service and veterans, you guys inspire me so much. And sometimes it's hard to, like I said, especially it's kind of weird to just walk up to somebody and be like, hey man, I appreciate your service, especially if you don't know them, but I still try to do it. But the inspiration you get from just hearing the stories and, nowadays in the 21st century, you kind of see a lot more than you did back then. But especially in the Civil War and in our past, a lot of people, when they went off, there was no video to show, what they actually had to go through and the sleeping and the food and how they had to, how bad it truly was. And there's just a story, but there's no way to go back and, maybe interview some of the people and kind of get some of and so it's just kind of story driven now in a lot of stuff. And, with World War II, there was a couple cameras, but like pre-Civil War, there wasn't the technology that we have now. And if you could go back and kind of capture some of those moments in history, or, you know, it would be cool to know that and to have that knowledge to maybe keep it from happening again, because, history does repeat itself. And I think there will always be some kind of conflict. But the fact that, anybody that's, gets to wake up right now and do what they want to do, it was bought and paid for. And I think we need to give our thanks and gratitude for that. But man, that's just the stories you get to hear and just the stuff. I mean, it gives you chills. And for me, I like seeing the helicopters and the jets. Like, if that don't make you excited to see, like, just these just cool dudes that are just, and they're probably fighting so many different demons inside their head. But from the outside looking in, man, it's cool. Like, it's cool to see the power. And like I said, no, not trying to disrespect anybody, because like I said, I know it's probably tough and it's hard, when you're going through that, and especially when you get back. But man, you guys are inspiration, and not just military, first responders, anybody that's, serving selflessly, or maybe I didn't use that word right, but serving without wanting anything in return. I think those are some of the best people society has to offer. And I think that's what we all kind of maybe want to strive for. We all want to serve self, or at least I do. I try to wake up every day, and I do fall short, but every day I want to, I want to be maybe a light, or just be there for somebody in need, no matter what the need is. And, I like to think that maybe I can serve in a different way than other people serve, and still have an impact on the world, and still leave put a little bit of good back in the world. And I'm hoping, kind of the reason I started this podcast, and the reason I named it what I named it, is because I would like to be able to maybe not know where this could lead, or where we could get from this. And that's kind of why I named it what I named it, with impact unknown. But I'd like to leave a positive impact. And, kind of a line from that movie, he said, with a world so dead set on tearing itself apart, I don't think it'd be such a bad idea to put a little bit of good back into it. And that is so powerful to to hear and to think about, and I try to strive for that, There's so many people in need, and, so many people talk about helping, but the only thing, just do it, and obviously you can only do so much, but do what you can, right? You don't have to have like a crazy amount to help. You don't even have to have money to help. Like I said, be present and listen. Check on your brother, check on somebody that you think could be struggling, whether it's military based or anything, trauma can happen in anybody's life, you know, just be your brother's keeper, be there for them. Check, eh, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there's somebody in your life right now that is going through one of their hardest battles in their seasons that they went through in life, and you might not even know it. And by you being rude or hateful to them, you could be adding to the problem that they're going through and the down spiral, and they might look good on the outside because it's so hard to know what somebody's going through, and you don't want to be another reason that they don't make it. And showing grace is free, right? It's free, and you can freely give it, and you can choose to give it, right? You don't have to be hateful, and it is so easy to be hateful, especially when somebody makes you mad, right? You want to respond with anger. But have you ever noticed how when you respond with anger, you kind of, at least me, I feel guilty, right? And sometimes you got to defend yourself, and sometimes you got to be, you kind of got to be that kind of aggressive or animalistic kind of personality to kind of like, hey man, get up, step off. But I always feel bad afterwards and guilty for like defending myself, and you probably shouldn't. But I think in my head, like, what caused that guy's outburst, and what did I do to cause it? By me acting the way I did it make it worse for what he's going through in life? And I try to think about that, and sometimes I fall short because I got anger. I got some anger, and when I get mad, and I don't think, and then when I'm reflecting on it afterwards, I get to think about it, and man, there's so many times, there's so much regret that at least me personally have for not saying more and not checking on people more, and now I kind of went through a lot when I was younger. I got bullied pretty bad to the point where I got out of school. And I know, that sounds like such a dumb thing to say, especially for some of the stories I've talked about on this podcast. And, I get it. It don't sound, it's like, man, this guy doesn't even know what struggles are. But I did go through some stuff, and I did get on a real bad path, and I prayed. I was like, hey God, why is this happening to me? Why does this continue to happen to me? What are you trying to teach me? You know, I'm at the bottom, man, and I was, I think, at the bottom. And I remember praying one night, and I was so disappointed in my life, and so it was every day I was getting bullied, and the people, they just kept on and kept on, and you want to defend yourself, but at the same time you just want to be accepted, you wanted those people to like you, and so you couldn't defend yourself because you wanted them to want to be around you, and they didn't, and so it just got worse and worse. And I asked God, I said, God, hey, show me the world through your eyes. And I think he really did answer that prayer. And I don't want to say I regret it, but man, do I see so much pain, and I see so much hurt in the world. And sometimes I get overwhelmed, and as I've got older, I don't really want to go around a lot of, you know, functions where there's a lot of people. I get overstimulated, and I just want to help everybody. I want to encourage them, and I want to be there for them. But sometimes, it gets a lot, and you don't know what the right words to say, and I see their pain, and I get to see some of, like I said, I think he answered the prayer, and I see so much, and maybe that's why I've tried, and this has been a dream of mine to start this podcast, and to start this journey, and I hope it helps just one person. I hope just maybe one person gets to hear it and be like, hey man, there's some hope left. There's somebody left that wants to, that understands, and cares about me. And man, I do care about even people I don't know, people that, there's somewhere, no matter who you are, there's somebody that, you have value, you're worth something, you are not your mistakes, and you're better than that. And, I know some days are harder than others, and some days maybe sleeping's the only way to get any true rest. And then even sleeping, you don't get no rest. But man, I would love to be here for you. Like I said, leave a comment, share this with somebody that you think might be in need. And I would love, if you could leave a comment, or reach out in any way. Man, I'd love to hear anybody's story. If you just need somebody to listen to you, I would love to be that person, because, like I said, everybody's got their own battles, and somebody's fighting a battle, and you might not even know how bad that battle is. And when you get out and you act out of anger, and you throw a fit, and you just, make yourself look foolish, man, you could have just contributed to such a, you could have just added so much more weight on somebody that's already at the breaking point. It's already at their max limit, and you're just every day. And so just think about what somebody else could be going through, and just show people grace, whether or not you think they deserve it. Just show them a little bit of grace, because everybody's got something they're going through. I mean, if you haven't seen that now by history, just do a deep dive into our history and look what some of the strongest men, some of the strongest, you know, some of the best things we've ever had to offer, and look at the grace that they showed, right? I mean, a man that went over to fight with no weapon, and he wasn't only saving his guys, he was saving the enemy. If that isn't impressive, I don't know what is. Like, if that doesn't make you want to do better in life, if that doesn't make you want to show grace, and whether it's spiritual or not spiritual, being kind to somebody is free. You can do it every day. And, some days we all fall short. I fall short of it every day. Like I said, I do have some of an anger, and some of it's built up from stuff that I went through. And I do pray about it, but my goal is to just be a light, right? And just be an ear when it's needed, and be a support when it's needed, and present, being present, and just uplifting somebody that's down. And so that's pretty much all I got. Thanks to every veteran that served, and thanks to anybody that has a act of service, when knowing that they don't want nothing in return, and they are doing it for the greater good. You are the best that society has to offer. And if you haven't heard that, you have now. I just appreciate all you guys. I appreciate everybody that served, that's been a part, no matter how big or small of a role you played. you did something, you were a part of it, and everybody is everybody deserves respect, no matter, like I said, no matter what their role was. And so for this Veterans Day, I just wanna let everybody know how much I appreciate them, and you know, I care about you guys. And if you're going through something and you don't think anybody's there or anybody's noticing or listening, I'd love to listen, and I would love to. And there's not much I could do other than give you encouragement. But man, I'd love to uplift you. I'd love to just talk to you. And so that's all I got for today. It was great talking to you guys. That's just a little bit I had on my mind on Veterans Day. Thanks again to everybody that served. I hope you guys all have a great night. God bless y'all. Thanks for everything. Thanks for, giving me the opportunity to even make this. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you.